AITA for not giving my boyfriend equity in my home. He doesn't work and hasn't invested any cash in it. 7 years. That is how long we have been together. 7 years of love, growth, challenges, and, I thought, mutual understanding. We built a life together, at least that's what I believed. But now, I am sitting here, trying to wrap my head around how everything unraveled over something that, to me, seemed so black and white. From the beginning, we had always shared our income. We were lucky enough to establish passive income streams that covered our bills and left us with a comfortable profit. We both contributed to that, so it only made sense to split the profits evenly. However, unlike me, he chose not to work. He was content living off of our shared passive income, while I continued to work and earn extra money. That was my choice, just like it was his choice not to work. Now, with my additional income, I started saving. It felt like the responsible thing to do. Life is unpredictable, and I wanted a financial cushion for the future. He, on the other hand, did not save. His reasoning: I spend my money on us. But here's the thing, we both spent our money on us. I wasn't hoarding money while making him pay for everything. We equally enjoyed the lifestyle we had, but I also made sure to put money aside because that's how I operate. Fast forward to now. An opportunity came up to buy a home with a friend. We decided to pool our cash together and buy the property outright, no loan, no debt, just a smart investment that we both believed would generate income. My boyfriend helped me through the process, sitting with me through negotiations, giving advice, and being supportive. But he did not contribute a single dollar to the purchase. Not a dime. This was my investment, and I took that financial leap without expecting anything from him. The plan for the house was simple: I was going to fix it up and turn it into an Airbnb. The rental income would be another stream of passive money, something that I could benefit from down the line. And despite the fact that he had no financial stake in this property, I made it clear that he could stay there for free whenever he wanted. Not only that, but I even decided I would share the rental income with him. I did not have to do this. It was my property, my investment, my risk, and yet, I was still offering to let him reap the rewards. But before we could even get to that stage, the house needed work. There was painting, cleaning, repairs, all things that had to be done before I could start renting it out. He initially started helping me, which I appreciated. But then, out of nowhere, he stopped. He looked at me and asked, "Why am I making you richer without equity?" I was taken aback. I told him, "You don't have to do the work if you don't want to." I was not forcing him to do anything. But then, to be fair, I even offered to pay him for his time. If he felt like he was working for nothing, then I had no problem compensating him. That seemed logical to me. That's when he got upset. "I don't want to be your employee, and I am insulted," he said. "I thought we were building a life together." This is where things took a turn. Suddenly, he was demanding equity in the house. Not a small stake, not just a cut of the rental income, but half of my share, 25% of the entire property. He was adamant. If I didn't give it to him, he said he would leave me. At that moment, everything felt like it came crashing down. 7 years. 7 years of being together, sharing a life, building something, or so I thought. And now, he was willing to throw it all away unless I gave him a piece of something he did not financially contribute to. I tried to reason with him. I told him that I loved him, that I wanted to stay together, that we could save up and buy a place together in the future, something that was ours. But no, that was not enough for him. He wanted a share of my property, and if he didn't get it, he was walking away. I stood my ground. I told him no. I would not give him a percentage of something I paid for. And just like that, he said he was leaving. I have not processed everything yet. I do not know if this is truly the end of our relationship or if he is just testing me, waiting for me to cave. But what I do know is that I feel betrayed. Was this always his mindset? Did he always believe that anything I acquired automatically belonged to him? Was I blind to something that should have been obvious? I feel hurt. I feel angry. I feel confused. Am I the asshole? Update 1. I didn't cave. I stood my ground. And just like that, he left. It was surreal watching him pack his things, slamming drawers, moving around with a kind of aggressive finality, muttering under his breath as if he were the victim in all of this. The weight of 7 years pressed down on my chest as I stood there, watching the life we had built together unravel with every piece of clothing he stuffed into his bag. But the strangest part? He wasn't as angry as I expected him to be. There was no grand explosion, no passionate plea for me to reconsider, no last-ditch effort to make me feel guilty for standing up for myself. If anything, there was something almost relieved in the way he moved. At first, I chalked it up to ego. Maybe he was pretending to be unbothered, acting as if this was his decision, as if walking away from our relationship was just another choice he made rather than the result of an ultimatum he never expected me to reject. I kept waiting for him to turn around, to say something that would make this feel real, to show some kind of emotion that proved 7 years actually meant something to him. But he didn't. He zipped up his bag, gave me a final glance that I couldn't quite read, and then he was gone. The silence that followed was deafening. The house felt bigger, emptier, like something vital had been scooped out of it. I sat on the couch for what felt like hours, staring at nothing, trying to process everything that had just happened. Part of me wanted to cry, to mourn what I had lost. But what exactly had I lost? A partner who saw my success as something to take rather than celebrate? A man who had been content living off of me without ever considering his own contributions? A relationship built on convenience rather than mutual support? The next few days were strange. The initial sadness morphed into something else, relief. There was no one draining me anymore, no one subtly guilting me for working hard, no one making me feel like I owed them for simply existing beside me. I threw myself into renovating the new house, feeling a kind of energy that I hadn't felt in years. For the first time in a long time, I was working for myself and only myself. And then, 2 weeks later, I got a message. "Hey, I know this is weird, but I think we should talk." It was from his ex-girlfriend. Curiosity got the best of me. Maybe it was a mistake, maybe I should have ignored it, but something inside me needed to know. We agreed to meet for coffee, and the moment she sat down across from me, I could tell she wasn't here to exchange pleasantries. She wasn't nervous, wasn't hesitant. She knew exactly why she had reached out. She wasted no time. Apparently, this wasn't new. This was a pattern. She had been in the exact same situation with him years ago, supporting him while he refused to work, believing they were building something together, only for him to turn around and demand a financial stake in something she had built on her own. When she refused, he walked. And then he did it again. And again. Moving from relationship to relationship, finding women who were ambitious, hardworking, successful, women who had something he could latch onto. And suddenly, everything clicked. I thought back to our 7 years together. The way he had always been content letting me take on more responsibility, the way he never seemed concerned about saving for the future, the way he acted as though our shared passive income was enough while I worked extra just to ensure we had a safety net. How he never pushed himself to do more, to build anything of his own. How he had always found ways to make me feel like I should be grateful for his presence rather than the other way around. Had I just been another stop on his cycle of financial dependency? Another woman to take care of him, to provide, to offer stability until he ran out of ways to benefit from the arrangement? Had he ever really loved me, or was I just convenient? The realization was painful but freeing. The breakup wasn't about a house. It was about him running out of ways to coast on my hard work. I blocked his number. I wasn't going to be part of his routine. Update 2. A month after he left, I finally felt like I was getting back on my feet. The house became my entire focus, a project that filled the empty spaces he left behind. There was something deeply therapeutic about it, scrubbing away years of grime, painting over old, dull walls, replacing fixtures that had long since stopped functioning. It was exhausting work, but it was mine. Every brushstroke, every nail hammered into place, every stubborn stain scrubbed until my hands ached felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. The physical labor gave my mind something to latch onto, something that wasn't tangled up in memories of him. This was mine. Built by my hands, my effort, my vision. It wasn't something I had to share, wasn't something that could be taken from me or guilt out of me. It was a clean slate, a fresh start. The long hours of work made it easier not to think about him. But some days, it still happened. His absence had a way of creeping in unexpectedly, slipping into the quiet moments when my hands stilled and my mind had room to wander. I'd reach for my phone to text him about something insignificant, a funny thought, a frustrating moment, a song that played while I worked that reminded me of a time when things were good, only to stop halfway, fingers hovering over the screen as the realization sank in. There was no one on the other end anymore. The reflex was so ingrained, so natural, that it startled me every time I caught myself doing it. Other times, I'd hear a noise, a car door slamming outside, the creak of floorboards shifting under their own weight, the hum of the air conditioning kicking on, and for a split second, my body would brace itself for the sound of his keys in the door. It was muscle memory, a habit formed over years of coexisting, of knowing his patterns so well that even in his absence, my body still anticipated them. But the moments passed quicker now. Each time, the weight of them lessened. The memories, once sharp and all-consuming, started to blur at the edges. It was getting easier. I was moving forward. Then, while clearing out the attic, I found something that stopped me cold. I had almost skipped it entirely. The attic had been more of an afterthought, a space I hadn't even planned to deal with that day. The air was thick with dust, swirling in the sunlight that streamed through the single grimy window. Old furniture sat in forgotten piles, draped in sheets, their shapes barely distinguishable beneath the layers of time. Boxes stacked haphazardly, their edges softened with age, filled the corners, some threatening to collapse under their own weight. I moved through the space slowly, pulling things out piece by piece, clearing away the neglected past to make room for something new. And then, tucked into the farthest corner, nearly swallowed by the shadows, I saw it. An old shoebox. It was unremarkable, worn and covered in dust like everything else up here. But the sight of it made something inside me tighten. It shouldn't have meant anything, probably just junk left behind by previous owners, forgotten and insignificant. But there was something about it, something that made my pulse pick up as I reached for it. The cardboard was soft and warped from time, the lid barely holding its shape. I lifted it carefully, almost hesitant, as if I already knew, deep down, that whatever was inside would change something. Inside was a stack of letters. Some were yellowed with age, the ink faded but still legible. Others were crisp, their edges sharp, clearly more recent. But the one thing they all had in common. They were addressed to him. A cold weight settled in my stomach. My fingers hovered over the stack, hesitation creeping in. There was still time to stop, to shove the box back where I found it and pretend I had never seen it. But my hands moved on their own, almost as if they had been waiting for this moment, as if some part of me already knew there had been something hidden beneath the surface all along. I pulled out the first envelope, my breath catching as I read the words printed across the top. Pending legal action, the ink was bold, underlined, my throat went dry, I reached for another, unpaid debts, my fingers trembled, another, a lawsuit. My heart pounded against my ribs, each letter a new crack in the foundation of what I had believed about him, about us, about the life we had shared. These weren't just late bills or minor financial missteps. This was worse. Final notices, demands for payment, warnings about wage garnishment. Letter after letter detailing consequences, threats of legal action, a financial mess so deep I could barely process it. Then I found the worst one, a notice from a collection agency, $60,000. I gripped the paper so tightly that the edges crumpled beneath my fingers. My hands felt numb, my vision blurring at the corners as I stared at the number, willing it to change, willing it to make sense. He owed $60,000. It didn't make sense. He had never mentioned debts. Never showed any signs of struggling financially. There had never been frantic phone calls, no unopened bills piling up on the counter, no sudden panic about money. He had lived comfortably, spent freely, never once giving me a reason to suspect that he was drowning under this kind of weight. But then, piece by piece, it started clicking into place. The way he had always brushed off conversations about saving money, acting as if it wasn't a priority. The way he had never seemed in a rush to get a job, despite our passive income only covering so much. The way he had pushed so hard for equity in my house, making it sound like it was about us, about our future together. But it had never been about that, had it? It had been about securing a safety net. Something he could leverage, something that, if things went south, he could claim as his own. That's why he had left so easily. That's why there had been no fight, no desperation, no real grief in his goodbye. He thought he could manipulate me, wear me down until I gave in. And when I didn't, he had no choice but to walk away, knowing he had nothing left to gain. He hadn't been heartbroken. He had been cut off. A sick feeling curled in my stomach. 7 years. 7 years of sharing a life with someone, of trusting them, of believing in a future together. 7 years, and I had never once thought to question his finances. Never once suspected that there was something hidden beneath the surface, something he had been keeping from me all along. I had built a life with someone who had seen me as his financial plan. The realization burned. I wasn't just protecting myself emotionally anymore, I was protecting myself financially. Update 3. I thought I had heard the last of him. The months that followed his departure had been a slow but steady climb back to myself. I had rebuilt my routine, poured my energy into the house, thrown myself into work, and found a strange, unexpected peace in the absence of his presence. The days no longer carried that heavy weight of waiting for a message, for a call, for some sign that he regretted walking away. I had convinced myself that this was closure. That he was finally, fully, out of my life. And then, 3 months later, his name flashed on my phone screen. "Can we talk?" I stared at the words, my stomach twisting, my heartbeat picking up even though I knew I shouldn't care. He was not supposed to be here, not even in the smallest way. I locked my phone, refusing to give it power, refusing to let my mind wander down a road that had already ended. Then another message came through. I made a mistake. I exhaled sharply, forcing my fingers to stay still, resisting the pull to engage. It was predictable. Of course, he had made a mistake. That was his pattern, never appreciating something until it was gone, only recognizing value when he no longer had access to it. I didn't need to respond. I didn't need to hear whatever carefully constructed apology he had prepared, whatever manipulative half-truth he had decided would be enough to make me let my guard down. I blocked the number. Again. And then, out of nowhere, he showed up at my house. The knock at the door sent a sharp jolt of irritation through me. I knew. Before I even looked through the peephole, I knew. The audacity, the nerve, the sheer entitlement that had been woven into his very existence, it was all still there, still as persistent as ever. My fingers hovered over the door handle, my pulse pounding in my ears. I wasn't about to let him in. I wasn't about to give him the satisfaction of thinking he could just waltz back into my life. But then, I saw it, he wasn't alone, standing next to him was a woman I did not recognize. She was tall, with sharp features and a tense posture, arms crossed over her chest in a way that made it clear she didn't want to be there any more than I wanted her to be. She wasn't looking at him. She was looking at me. And there was something in her expression that made my stomach twist in a way that had nothing to do with seeing him again. Before I could even process it, he started talking. He launched into a speech, voice steady, rehearsed, the same smooth, calculated tone he had always used when he wanted to manipulate a situation in his favor. He had been thinking, he said. He had made mistakes. He had let go of something real, something worth fighting for. He didn't want to throw away 7 years over a misunderstanding. His voice was thick with manufactured regret, every syllable carefully placed to sound sincere, to make me second-guess the truth I had already pieced together. I was about to answer when the woman next to him moved. She cut in, voice sharp, words slicing through the air like a blade. The way she stood, the way she positioned herself, it wasn't just discomfort, it was something deeper. Something angry. She didn't let him control the narrative. She didn't let him dictate the story. She turned to me, her eyes locking onto mine, and I felt something shift, something click into place before she even spoke. She said he had told her we were over ages ago. That our relationship had been toxic. That I had been the one who cheated, that I had left him with nothing. That he had been broken, devastated, a man picking up the pieces of a life that I had supposedly destroyed. And she had believed him. Because that was what he did, he spun stories, wove himself into a victim, tailored his past into something that suited his needs. But then, she said, the pattern started. The same excuses. The same entitlement. The same casual way he deflected responsibility. He had started talking about money, about needing something stable, about investing in a business that never seemed to have real details, just vague promises and lofty ideas. That was when she started digging. And that was when she found me. I felt the disgust rising in my throat as she spoke, my skin crawling with the weight of it all. He hadn't even tried to deny it. He just stood there, his mouth slightly open, his carefully rehearsed speech crumbling to dust around him. Caught. Exposed. She turned back to me, her voice calmer now, more resigned. She had needed to see me in person, she said. Needed to confirm what she already knew. And now that she had, she was done. She wasn't going to be part of whatever story he was trying to sell. She shot him one last glare before walking away, her strides purposeful, final. She didn't look back. She was done with him. And now, so was I. He stood there for a moment, watching her leave, before turning back to me, scrambling for something, anything, that would salvage the moment. He muttered something about being lost, about thinking things would be different, about not knowing what else to do. His words were weak, empty, desperate in a way that almost made me pity him. But I didn't. I told him to leave, and this time, I knew it was for good. No doubts. No what-ifs. Just relief.